Hey everyone, it's John here, and in today's video we're going to take a look at building multiple dependent drop-down lists. So this is the situation where you have one drop-down, and based on whatever you select there, your second drop-down list is going to show different options. Now this is easy if you only need to do this once, but if you need to repeat those drop downs, then that's where it becomes a little bit more complex. So let's take a look at how we can do that. First up, let's take a look at how we can create a single set of dependent drop-down lists. So here we've got a small table of car makes and models, and we're going to create a drop-down list to select the make, and then based on that, we're going to be able to select the models for that make. So first up, we're going to make our drop-down list for the make. We can go up to the data tab and select data validation. And here we're going to choose the list option here. And for our source, we're going to select our make column and press OK. And now we've got this drop-down list, and it's got the three options in our table so far. Now what we need to do is reduce those model options that are available for our drop-down list based on this selection here. So for example, if we select Toyota, then we only want to have Camry and Corolla available as options for our model. And to do that, we're going to use the filter function. So here we're going to filter our model column, and we're going to filter it based on our make column being equal to whatever is selected here. And when we press enter, we now get a dynamic array with those options available. And if we select another option here, then those model options are now available. And we can create our drop-down list from this. So back up in the data tab, we can create another data validation list. And here our source is going to be this spilled array. So we can just select the first cell there and then reference the entire array with the hash operator at the end and press OK. And now we've got our forward options. And if we select another make, then you can see our filter function returns those makes for BMW, and they're also now available in our drop-down list. So setting up a single set of dependent drop-down lists is not too hard, but the problem comes when you want to repeat these inside of a table. So inside the data validation source, we can't directly use a filter function here. So it turns out that only certain functions are going to evaluate in this source, and the filter function is not one of them. So we'll need to figure out some alternative instead. Now let's take a look at how we can create multiple dependent drop-downs inside of a table. So here we've got our list of makes and car models. And in this table, we want to be able to select from the make in this column here for each row. And then based on that selection, have a selection of models available in each row to select from. So first up, we can create a drop-down for our make. So we're going to select the entire column. And if we go up to the data tab, we can click on data validation and create a list here. And this is going to be fairly simple. Just reference our make column and press OK. And now we have the ability to select all of the values from that column. Now our dependent dropdown for our model here, what we're going to do is use the fact that the source in a drop-down list can either be a range or a formula that evaluates to a range. And it turns out that XLOOKUP is such a formula. So we're going to create our source with an XLOOKUP formula, and we're going to base that on a range that we create here that's going to give us all of our make values here. So our first drop-down list. And then based on that, we're going to look up a list of all of the potential items for that. So in each row, we're going to have all of the list items for a given make. So first up, we're going to create our list of make values using the unique function and referencing this column here. And that gets us a dynamic array with those values. And based on these values, we want to have the model values in this row. So we're going to use the filter function. So we're going to filter our model column here. And we're going to filter it based on the make being equal to this current value here. And we want that to go across the columns, so we're going to add a transpose function. And we could copy and paste this down to get all of our rows, but we don't want to be copying and pasting this formula down as our list of unique values here grows. So we want this to be based on our dynamic array and grow with that. So let's just undo that. And so in order to do that, we're going to use the reduce function. So reduce is going to allow us to loop through an array of values and perform some calculation based on that. And reduce takes an initial value first. We're just going to give it an empty string. And then it takes the array that you want to loop through. So that's going to be our dynamic array of unique values here. And then we need to perform a calculation on each of those. And for this, we need to use a lambda function. And that lambda function has to have two parameters. So it has to have an accumulator parameter. We're just going to call that A. And this is essentially the previous calculation that was performed during looping through our array. And so that's why we need this initial value, as when we do our first calculation, it's going to use that instead of a value in this array. And then we also need a current value. So we're just going to call that V. And that's the current value as we loop through this array. So it's going to be Toyota, then Ford, then BMW. Now, we don't want to reference this cell value here. Instead, that's going to be referenced as the current value as we loop through our array. And we just called that V. And let's close everything up. And reduce only returns the last calculated value. So what we need to do is, as we go through our array, we want to stack the results on top of each other so that we return the full array of values here. So you can see that these are the list items that we want for our last item here. Now let's use vstack to return all of those items. And so we're going to stack our accumulated value or previously calculated value with this current calculation here and return everything that way. So here we've got our Toyota items, we've got our Ford items, and we've got our BMW items now. We also have this extra row on top, and that's from our initial value here. And so we're just going to drop that first row. We can use the drop function for that. And we're just going to drop the first row. There we go. We've got our items all lined up. So we now have a list of unique values here. And then based on that, the dependent drop-down items going across the columns for each row. Let's also just remove these NA values. So we're going to use if error for that. And let's return an empty string if we have an error. And there we go. We can now use these two dynamic arrays in our XLOOKUP function to return the correct dropdown items. So the XLOOKUP function that we're going to use, we are going to look up whatever value is selected here in our make column. And we're going to look for it in this list of unique values. And here we're going to reference the entire dynamic array. And we're going to press F4. So we want that to be an absolute reference and always stay on this dynamic array. And the thing we want to return is our list of drop-down items. And again, we want the entire dynamic array. So here we're referencing cell L4 and then using the hash operator at the end to reference the entire array. And I'm going to press F4 again as we want that to be an absolute or fixed reference. And in this case, we have Toyota selected here and we get our Toyota model values. Here we could change this. Now we have Ford values or BMW values. And so we're going to copy this formula. Let's just press Control C and copy it. Let's press Escape. And now we're going to create our drop-down list with that. So let's select our entire column, go up to the Data tab, Data Validation, and create a list. And we're just going to paste that formula in and press OK. And now we've got our Toyota options as we've got Toyota selected here. If we change this to Ford, then we're going to see our Ford options and BMW. Here's our BMW options. And we can select new values in here and get those in our dependent dropdown. In this case, we can also add new customers here. Let's click and drag these guys, and then our make dropdown is going to be available, as well as our model dropdown that's dependent. Now this is going to be dynamic, so if we add new values into this table here, then we're going to see them in our various drop-down lists. So here we've got some extra makes and models. Let's add those into our source table here, and you can see that this list of unique values grows, as well as here we've got a list of those items. So we have some new items in here. Here's our Ford Fiesta. And if we take a look, that's now available in our dependent dropdown. We also have our new make option here, as well as those corresponding dependent options in the model column. So this is a fully dynamic solution. So whatever we put into our source table here is going to show up in our various drop-down lists. Now, everything is currently all in the one sheet here, and currently that's the only thing that's not dynamic, but we can fix that. So one thing that's going to break with things in different sheets is this drop-down here. If we go up to the Data tab and Data Validation, you're going to see that it references this hard-coded range. And that's going to grow when we add items in this table here if it's in the same sheet. But this breaks if we're in separate sheets. So if our drop-down sources are in another sheet to this table here. But we can fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this column a named range. So let's select it, and we're going to go to the Formula tab and define a name here. And let's call this LST make. And it's referring to our table column here. And now let's go and select this column, and we're going to go to the Data tab, Data Validation, and let's change this. And let's reference that named range. So if I press F3, It's going to open up my named range list. And let's double click and select that and press OK. And there we go. So now we get the same results, but if this table is in a different sheet, then our reference is going to grow as we add items into this table here. The other thing we would need to fix is the references here. Right now, this doesn't have a sheet reference. And so if these were in a different sheet, then we would need to include those sheet references. And so I'm just going to select another sheet and go back here so that it creates the sheet reference for me. And let's just copy this and add it to our dynamic array reference as well. And then we could use this formula instead with our sheet references in our data validation. Now we have a fully dynamic solution that's going to grow with whatever's in this list. And we can move these tables, so this source table and this data entry table and these formulas to different sheets if we want. And that way we can hide this formula. We also don't need this XLOOKUP, so that's just for formula writing purposes. We can get rid of that too. Now let's take a look at this solution and see how we can use it to add another dependent drop-down list into the mix. So here we've got our make, model, but now we have another option. So we have a color option, and we want to be able to select the make, the model, and then based on those two, we want the color. So all we need to do is reuse these formulas. And so here we're going to create a unique based on our model. And so now we get the list of all the unique models. And here our reduce function has some duplicate results because now we have multiple values for the different colors. We can fix that. So here we're just going to add in a unique function as well. And now let's copy this and paste it down here. And we're just going to update a couple of these things. So instead of filtering on the model column, we're going to filter on the color column based on the model column. And let's press OK. And then now for each model, we have the various color options available. Now let's create our XLOOKUP function in our data validation. So let's select the entire column here, go up to the data tab, data validation, list. And here we're going to look up the value here, and we want this to be a relative reference. So let's press F4 a couple times to get to a relative reference. And we're going to look in this dynamic array here. Let's add the hash operator to reference the entire array. And we're going to return results from this array here. And again, hash operator to reference the entire array. And let's press OK. And now we've got our color options available based on the model selection here. So here's our Toyota Camry options. You can see black, red, and silver, and that's exactly what we have in here. And again, this is going to be dynamic. So here we've got some new options. Let's add those into our source. And you can see all our formulas update. And here's our new options. So here we have our Honda Accord, silver, red, and black options, and that's exactly what we have available in our color dropdown for that. And you can even easily create multiple dependencies with the same method. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for future Excel videos like this one, and we'll see you in the next video.